Sutra 1.16. Tat param purushakyate gunavaitrasnyam. Tat param means that highest, that most excellent, the ultimate, the best, the purest, the supreme. Purushakyate means the highest knowledge of the soul, perception of the soul. Gunavaitrasnyam means indifference to the qualities of nature, inertia or dormancy, tamas, passion or vibrance, rajas, and luminosity or serenity, sattva. Tat param purushakyate gunavaitrasnyam. The ultimate renunciation is when one transcends the qualities of nature and perceives the soul. The purest form of renunciation is when one is free from the qualities of nature. One realizes the soul at once. Clear intelligence of head and heart leads to this. If through abhyasa we activate and purify our energy, through vairagya we disentangle ourselves from involvement in even the subtlest manifestations of the phenomenal world. The creation of energy alone, without control or restraint, cannot lead to freedom. To understand the 5 levels of vairagya, one should refer to the model of nature's evolution described in the introduction in the section on Samadhi Pada. Here we see the unfolding of nature from its nominal or alinga state into the linga state through mahat, then from the non-specific or avishesha phenomenon, including ahamkara, ego or I consciousness, to the manifest or vishesha expressions of nature which form the basis of our experience of everyday reality. The reverse or involutionary process, which is the path of yoga, can be seen as the ascension of a ladder. Abhyasa gives us the necessary impetus for the ascent. By vairagya, we draw up the ladder behind us. The lower rungs of renunciation are attempted by anyone who tries to disentangle himself from such a habit as smoking or drinking coffee. We cut down, then we stop, but the desire persists in the mind. When that mental desire has faded away, years later, our body cells may spontaneously rekindle attachment. Later still, we may find we become attached to the idea of ourselves as non-drinkers of coffee. So the ego is still attached to the idea of coffee, even though it is now non-coffee. This is self-conscious virtue. Gradually we may become totally indifferent to coffee, but coffee nonetheless still exists in our mind. This sutra relates to the ultimate freedom achieved through para-vairagya. Here phenomenal nature ceases to exist for us, as the gunas are transcended, drawn back into their nominal root. By transcending the gunas, we unlock that which binds us to nature. When this is achieved in all our involvements, the soul is fully perceived. The consciousness has now, by the power of wisdom, acquired everything that has to be acquired, and discarded everything that has to be discarded. The sadhaka is free from all bondage, but there is no feeling of birth and death. Kaivalya is attained. This is the effect of the twin disciplines of abhyasa and vairagya, through which the sadhaka becomes free and wise, untainted by the influence of citta. In 4.29, The word prashankyana, meaning highest knowledge, has been used. Again in Sutra 4.31, there is the expression sarvarana malapetsya, which means when all obstructing impurities are destroyed totally. Then follows purushakyati, signifying perception of the soul. Sutra 1.17 Vitarka vikara ananda asmita rupa anugamat sampragnataha. Vitarka means analytical thinking or analytical study, argument, inference, conjecture. Vikara means reason, meditation, insight, perfect intelligence where all logic comes to an end. Ananda means elation, bliss, felicity. Asmita Rupa means consciousness of being one with oneself. Anugamat means by accompanying, by following, comprehending or grasping. Sampragnataha means distinguish, know actually, know accurately. Vitarka vikara ananda asmita rupa anugamat sampragnataha. Practice and detachment develop four types of samadhi: self-analysis, synthesis, bliss, and the experience of pure being. Through practice and detachment, four types of awareness develop: absorption of the consciousness achieved through engrossment in conjecture, inference and analytical study; synthesis, consideration and discrimination; bliss or elation, and a state of pure being, constitutes sampragnata samadhi. Here a distinction is recognized between the seer and the seen. Sampragnata samadhi consists of vitarka, engrossment in analysis; vikara, engrossment in reasoning; ananda, experiencing a state of bliss; and asmita, experiencing the state of I. Vitarka is an act of involvement by deliberate thinking and study, which leads to the final point or root cause. It is an attempt to distinguish the cause from the effect, a process of judicious experimental research from the gross to the subtle. Intellectual analysis, vitarka sampragnata, being a function of the brain, produces relative and conditioned knowledge. It is gross and lacks refinement. It is further divided into deliberation, savitarka, and non-deliberation, nirvitarka. Vikara means differentiating knowledge. It is a process of investigation, reflection, and consideration through which the wandering, conjectural brain is stilled, and the sadhaka develops mental depth, acuteness, refinement, and subtlety. Vikara too is divided into reasoning, savikara, or non-reasoning, nirvikara. As the growing body of experience brings maturity, fulfillment is reached, and a state of bliss or ananda ensues, freeing the sadhaka from the mechanism of study, investigation, and fulfillment, and leading him to dwell in the self alone. This state is called asmita rupa sampragnata samadhi. Thus, all 6 gradations of sabija samadhi, meaning samadhi with support or seed, that is, savitarka, nirvitarka, savikara, nirvikara, Ananda and Asmita are explained. There is a seventh stage of samadhi, Virama Pratyaya, so called Asampragnata Samadhi, and an eighth called Dharma Megha or Nirbija Samadhi. As external objects are susceptible to change, deliberation may not be pure. One must go from the periphery to the source. Vikara is beyond Vitarka. Ananda is beyond Vitarka and Vikara. And Asmita is beyond Vitarka, Vikara and Ananda. This is the gradual process from the gross body towards the subtle mind, and from the subtle mind towards the source, the core of being. Savitarka and Nirvitarka Samadhi belong to the function of the brain, and are attained by contemplation on gross elements and objects knowable through the senses. Savikara and Nirvikara Samadhi belong to the realm of the mind, and are attained by contemplation of subtle elements. And Ananda belongs to the realm of mature intelligence. Ananda must be attributed not to the senses, but to pure wisdom. Contemplation by the self, of the self, brings one close to Purusha. Here the self is devoid of ego. It is said that the front of the brain is the analytical part, Savitarka, while the back of the brain is the old, reasoning area, Savikara. The base of the brain is the seat of Ananda, and the crown of the head of the individual self, Asmita. Sabija Samadhi is achieved by drawing these four facets of the brain towards its stem. When this synchronization has been achieved, a transitory state of quietness, Manolaya, is experienced. Then from the stem of the brain, consciousness is made to descend towards the source, mind, the seat of the heart. Here it merges into a mindless, beginningless, endless state of being. Amanaskatva, or Nirbija Samadhi, meaning samadhi without seed or support. It is a conquest of the spirit. In between Sabija and Nirbija Samadhis, Patanjali describes an intervening state, Virama Pratyaya, which others called Asampragnata Samadhi. It is a spiritual plateau, or Manolaya, a transitory state or a resting place before one plunges into Nirbija Samadhi. Through practice and renunciation, each and every part of the man, the skin, the cells, the breath, the movements of thought, intelligence and reason, become acquainted with the self. This is Sampragnata Samadhi. The sadhaka's intelligence spreads evenly within and around his body, like the surface of a lake without ripples. Then he sees things clearly. In this Sampragnata Samadhi, or contemplation, the disparity between the seer and the seen remains. Take, for example, the performance of an asana, or movements of breath in pranayama. In the beginning, these are done at a physical level. As understanding deepens, the body is penetrated internally. Its movements are connected with the intelligence, and the asana is grasped as a single unit in all directions, front to back, top to bottom, side to side. It is absorbed and held by the body's intelligence for the soul to perceive. One learns that one's body is the bow, the asana is the arrow, and the target is the soul. When the asana is perfected, the target is struck. The field and the knower of the field are united. The logic and reasoning of the asana are fulfilled. The sadhaka, having lost the consciousness of the asana and of his body, is one with himself. His asana, his breath, his effort, and his very being are one with the millions of cells in his body. He has reached sasmita, the auspicious state of asmita. Patanjali generally addresses us at several levels at once, so it is not unreasonable to explain vitarka, vikara, ananda, and asmita in relation to asana. When we begin the practice of asana, our method is largely hit or miss. Let me try this, let me try that. It is a process of trial and error based on conjecture. That is the nature of vitarka. It is adventurous rather than calculating, but it does not forget its errors. We then evolve to the stage we may call vikara, in which a body of experience has been built up from investigation, mature consideration, and dawning discrimination. As our asanas ripen, we reach a stage when skin consciousness moves toward the center of being, and the center radiates towards the periphery. Movement is at once centripetal and centrifugal. This integrity brings bliss, ananda. Finally, when the conscious mechanism by which we consider and perform asana comes to an end, the process reaches a resting point. The asana then rests only on the inner self, which is in poise. The only support is asmita. Sutra 1.18 Virammapatyaya Abhyasa Purava Samskara Shesha Anya. Virama means rest, repose, pause. Pratyaya means going towards, firm, conviction, reliance, confidence, usage, practice, a cause, instrument, means, device. Abhyasa means practice. Purva means before, old, previous, foregoing. Samskara shesha means balance of subliminal impressions. Anyaha means other, another, different. Viramya pratyaya abhyasa purava samskara sheshanya. The void arising in these experiences is another samadhi. Hidden impressions lie dormant, but spring up during moments of awareness, creating fluctuations and disturbing the purity of the consciousness. As mentioned earlier, Patanjali indicates another state of samadhi in between sabija samadhi and nirbija samadhi, but does not name it. It is experienced with the cessation of all functions of the brain, leaving behind only the residual merits or samskaras of good practices. In this state, one is free from passions, desires, and appetites. The word used for this state is virama pratyaya. In it, the sadhaka rests in a highly evolved state in which the intelligence is still. The nearest we come to virama pratyaya in ordinary experience are those few moments before falling asleep, when the intellect relaxes its hold on thoughts and objects, and the mind becomes silent, a state reminiscent of Manolaya. Like a river joining the sea, the mind is dissolving into the self. We are given a momentary glimpse of the seer, abiding in the self. The moment one loses the feeling of I, one is in this state of virama pratyaya, which is neither negative nor positive. It is a state of suspended animation in the consciousness. Patanjali calls this state a different type of samadhi, anyaha. It is not deliberate, but natural. In deliberate or sampragnata samadhi, the intelligence dissolves, but the sense of self remains. The samskaras of good practices remain, and all other fluctuations cease. This state becomes a plateau from which the aspirant may climb further up the spiritual ladder. As it is only a transitional state, one must take care that stagnation does not set in. It should not be taken as the goal. One should then, in fact, intensify one's sadhana to reach the state of the absolute nirbija samadhi. In the next sutra it is said that those who remain in virama pratyaya not only conquer the elements of nature, but merge with them, while others live without a physical body as angels or devatas. We have the examples of Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Ramana Maharshi, and Sri Aurobindo, who remained in that state for a long period without the awareness of their bodies, but emerged later to reach Nirbija Samadhi. Such sadhakas are called Prakriti Layas. Laya is merged in nature, or Videhins, meaning existing without a body. Other yogis who have reached a certain level of evolution in their search are caught at a crossroads, feeling that this is the end of their journey. If they stay there and do not attempt to go further in the practice of yoga, they fall from the grace of yoga. Lord Krishna calls such aspirants yoga bharashtas. In the Bhagavad Gita he says that those yogis who have fallen deliberately from the grace of yoga are reborn in the houses of the pure and prosperous, where they live a contented life in a righteous way for many years, while the others who have undeliberately fallen are reborn into the families of poor yogis who are endowed with wisdom. Then they strive again for perfection, beginning from the state which they have reached in the previous life. Virama pratyaya is a precarious state. It may bind the sadhaka forever, or it may uplift him. Patanjali advises in 1.20 that those who have reached virama pratyaya should not stop there, but should redouble their efforts with faith and courage, memory and contemplative awareness. Sri Vyasa, the first commentator on Patanjali, calls this redoubled effort upaya pratyaya. Upaya is the means by which one reaches one's aim, a stratagem. Through upaya pratyaya, the evolved souls mentioned above reach nirbija samadhi. Patanjali clearly uses the word sampragnata for the state of samadhi, which is reached through vitarka, vikara, ananda, and asmita. In this sutra, he explains the deliberate maintenance of a thought-free state of consciousness. Hence, here he has not given a precise term, but uses the expression anya, meaning another, or a different type of samadhi, and not asampragnata samadhi, as conveyed by many commentators.